I would like to welcome everyone today. My name is Mark Smith, and this is our updated market overview and commentary. Today's date is September 14th of 2009. Today actually is a good date to give you an update for the fact that it was just 1 year ago that Lehman Brothers was allowed to fail. That market event created the path that we're all too familiar with, which involved many corporations going into bankruptcy as well as many banks failing. Dow Jones Industrial Average sank from 11,005 1 year ago to 6,500 in March of this year. As we're looking at where the markets were at as of the end of August, you will note that we've seen a market improvement, and in fact we've seen roughly a 50% rebound in market values. So one might ask themselves, what gives? The reality is price matters. The point to be made is that the stock market was simply oversold and the values became too compelling. So where do we go from here? First, you need to remember that the stock market has always fully recovered over time. And secondly, it's important to remember is that the time it takes to fully recover is not that long. If you look at this chart, which tracks the S&P 500 back to the 1930s, you'll see a number of bear market conditions reflected. Three that I'd like to point out would be, of course, the Great Depression of the 1930s, then also the 1973-74 market, and look also at the tech bubble that was created at the beginning of this decade. As you then go to the next chart, what you'll see is that the longest recovery period ever was that during the Great Depression. And in fact, as you'll see, it took 4 years and 4 months to recover from an 80% drop. So the reality is it doesn't take decades to recover from a bad market condition. Always remember, of course, the past performance is no guarantee of future results. If you look at the Dow or the stock market in general and where it was at the end of 2007 or towards the end of 2007, you'll note that the Dow was around 14,000. If today we're at, say, 9,500, one might ask themselves as to what kind of return might I expect going forward. Well, if the recovery period with this bear market that we've just experienced is no greater than the Great Depression, and it is our opinion that this is not going to be as bad as the Great Depression, then if we see 14,000 on the Dow over the next 4 years, the annualized return for those of us in the stock market should be equal to or around 10%. There's reasons, in our opinion, to be optimistic. Let me share a few of those as we go forward. First of all, I'd like to talk about the reasons why recessions can be considered good. If you think about a forest fire, for example, a forest fire actually has some good results. In fact, it clears out the dead and the older trees, and it makes room for all the new growth. Likewise, a recession serves to clear out the weaker companies and those industries that really are living beyond their usefulness. So for that reason alone, we feel that there could be some positives from this past 12 to 18 months. With that in mind, let me share with you some points that I think are noteworthy. First of all, the optimism index has doubled since March of this year. That's important because consumers are what drives this economy. And if you look at people feeling more positive, then they will be willing to go out and shop some more. So we're positive about that. Secondly, housing looks to be turning the corner. And I'll make two noteworthy comments there. One is that the sales of existing homes have now gone up for 3 months in a row. That's the first time that that's happened since 2004. Secondly, there's what's known as the Case-Shiller Index, and that tracks the average price of a home that's being sold on a national basis. And that went up in the second quarter, and that is the first time that has happened in 3 years. It's also noted that some people are actually selling their homes for more than they've listed them for. Next, manufacturing orders have recently shot up, and corporate profits during the second quarter were up 19% from that of the first quarter. And finally, there will be noted reasons for concern as we think about all of the liquidity that's being injected into the economy. However, it's our opinion that inflation will not be a concern for probably at least a couple of years until manufacturing capacity and unemployment levels come down. Let me just wrap up by thanking you for the trust and confidence placed in us and reference a newspaper that was sent to me last week. A good friend of mine recently sent me a newspaper from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Some of you may be aware that last summer, Cedar Rapids, Iowa saw a 500-year flood unfold in that city. And this newspaper had many photos that reflected what the city looked like a year ago and what it looks like today. And it's amazing at the devastation that existed a year ago and how good this city looks a year later. The point is that don't bet against Americans. When we're faced with problems and troubles and difficult conditions, hardworking Americans will do whatever it takes to get them back to normal. And the city of Cedar Rapids was a great example of that. Thank you very much, and I wish you well.